I'm Katie White, and this is By the Book, Enhancing Relationships Through Literature. My mission here at By the Book is to connect you with books that foster personal growth and strengthen relationships with family and friends. I believe the best relationship advice is already out there, and I'm here to help you discover it. Today I have my friend Ava Turner with me. Ava grew up in the northern Utah area with her mom and her 3 sisters. She loves being in nature, making homemade bread, and spending time with her husband Xander. Ava is currently a senior in her undergraduate program studying marriage and family studies at BYU Idaho, which is where we met through the major, where she found her passion for relationship education and mental health and family advocacy. She now works as part of BYU Idaho's Hope Council, doing mental health advocacy, awareness, and education, and also as a TA for the Child and Family Advocacy class on campus. If you are a student on BYU Idaho campus, I highly suggest you take that class. Probably my favorite class ever on BYU Idaho campus. After graduation, Ava hopes to empower individuals and families as a family life educator and a Christian family advocate, helping others to build strong and healthy dating, marriage, and parent-child relationships in their homes and communities. Above all, Ava aspires to use her knowledge, passion, and skills to be an intentional and loving wife and future mother in her own family. So, here she is, Ava Turner.
Thanks for inviting me on. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad that it worked out for us to do this today.
Me too.
Okay, so we have a new thing I want to start doing on the podcast. I'm going to ask Ava what a peach and a pit of her week has been. So, for those of you who maybe are confused about what that is, kind of like a rose and a thorn, but I just think peach and pit is kind of cute. So, yeah. The good and the bad part about your life recently, what's been going on? What's your peach and your pit?
I'm going to start with my pit. My pit would be, I have a lot to do, which is great. I'd rather be busy than bored.
True.
But I just get super exhausted. So this week I've been falling asleep before I can even get it done. So then I wake up the next day like, oh no! But you know what? It's always worked out. It's the thing. It's like you stress out and then it always works out. So, and then my peach would be that I recently officially changed my name to Turner, my last name. I just got married in January, and I surprised my husband that I had changed it. And so it was a fun little surprise just to see how happy it was that was official. So
that's adorable.
Pretty crazy.
Well, guys, you're the first to hear it. She's officially Ava Turner. Okay, perfect. So, Ava, tell us which book you chose to talk to us about today and why.
I chose How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. And
classic.
It's a real classic. It's by Dr. John Van Epp. I chose this book because I love relationship education, and this is the book, I think, to choose as someone who wants to educate others on relationships, because John Van Epp basically, the whole book gives us advice for how to date right, and how to date to marry right, and how to be intentional in our dating efforts, and I think that's huge. Like, so much of marriage that ends can be prevented with proper dating. And so if we can start by educating others on how to date, we can help people have good marriages. And so I'm passionate about it, and so that's why I love this book.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited to hear your take on it as a newly married individual, of like kind of how you were able to apply these principles in your own life too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so next I just want to hear a little bit about the author. What do you know about John Van Epp?
John Van Epp is a professional in relationships. I know he did some like relationship counseling. He's also written several books, one of them being How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. And then I know he also founded Love Thinks, and that's a website you can go to become an educator on this kind of stuff, but also to get information, books, and just other information about relationship education and for dating or parenting or your marriage. And so that's a good website to go check out. Love Thinks.
Perfect. I think I've heard of that, but it's been a long time. I should look at it again.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, cool. So how were you introduced to the book? I'm pretty sure I probably know, but tell our audience, how were you introduced to the book?
Right, so as a student in marriage and family studies, we read a lot of good books. And one of the classes I took was called Marriage Prep, and so we had to read this book as a requirement for that class. And so that's kind of where I first read it. I'd heard about it in other classes, but that was the first time I read it. And then later, I took a class to certify me to teach the principles in this book
cool.
for dating and for marriage. And so then I kind of had to reintroduce myself to all of the principles taught so that I can go and teach it to others. So that's what I'm currently doing as well.
Guys, we have an expert on the job today.
Oh, so not an expert, but getting there.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about it. So now we've gotten to the point where Ava is going to teach about a main principle the book teaches, or some of her main takeaways, and how that relates to relationships. So I'll kind of let you take it from here.
Sounds good. So the title of the book is a little bold, How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. At first I heard that and I was like, that's a little harsh. Like, I don't want to call anyone a jerk, but he describes what a jerk is. And I like to say there's a difference between a big J jerk and a little J jerk. We can all be those little J jerks sometimes, where we do things that are maybe insensitive to other people, or just inconsistent or rude, or we're just not maybe thoughtful or aware of other people's feelings, or misunderstand. We do things that hurt other people. That is normal. Where a big J jerk is, the kind of jerk that John Van Epp is trying to keep us from falling in love with, are those people who are unwilling to change and who are blind to their own weaknesses and won't accept the fact that they need to change, that they need to make changes, and that they're maybe abusive in some shape or form. And there's a lot of good people who might fall in love with individuals who have the tendencies to have unhealthy relationships that can be, big J jerk behavior, and they're good people. And so it's like, how do we date right so that we're not getting married or getting further into a relationship where really big hurts can happen? Like, just realizing that you're in a place that isn't great, it isn't healthy, or maybe you're getting abused and we don't want you to be there. And so he formulated this model called the RAM model. RAM is RAM, stands for Relationship Attachment Model. And I love it because it's a visual way to put a relationship into something you can measure and evaluate and discuss. And relationships can have a lot of parts to them. They can seem really complicated. But by having this RAM model, John Van Epp basically says, here's a simple way to assess your relationship and to look at it. So the RAM model consists of 5 sliders or 5 parts. The first one is know, and then it's trust, rely, commit, and touch. And they go in that order. And so basically you're not supposed to have, you're supposed to know the person more than you trust them more than you rely on them more than you commit to them, and commit more than you touch. And so throughout the book, he kind of goes through each of these principles and teaches us what they mean and how to have a healthy, sure foundation in our relationship to be able to progress towards marriage.
Yeah. So for those of you who are more visual learners, I'm going to post a little infographic thing on the Instagram by the book with Katie, so you can see what she's talking about. But yes, I love the RAM model. It's just such a clear way to be able to kind of evaluate where you're at and where you want to be.
Absolutely.
It just it helped me think about my relationships in a much more concrete scientific way, rather than just emotions and I don't really know what I'm doing and I just want it to go somewhere. But I really love how he breaks it down and makes it so simple in a way that you can truly evaluate, rather than just is it going well or is it not?
Right. And that's his big thing, is how do you follow your heart without losing your head? Because sometimes we can get so into all the emotions of a relationship that we start making decisions that we otherwise wouldn't make.
Right.
And so the principles are teaching us, how do you follow your heart and choose to love a person and get into relationships, but make sure that they're healthy and good for you, rather than just getting into a relationship. So,
right.
Yeah, it's really, really good, and I've loved it. I've loved teaching it too to others. It's been really powerful.
That's awesome. Well, Ava, who would you recommend this book to and why?
This book, I think, mostly is for those who are single and wanting to date, or dating and wanting to progress towards marriage. Anyone who's wanting to better their relationships, their dating relationships or their future marital relationships. I mean, even if you're married, you can learn principles from it. The book is more for like a dating, preparing for marriage kind of relationship. But John Van Epp teaches, like, applies the RAM model to marriage and has a whole thing on that, has a whole program on that. And so that's part of the certification I did allowed me to do that. And so now I'm teaching marriage workshops about it. And I love teaching the RAM model in marriage because it really breaks down. I mean, a marriage can have so much intimacy, physically, emotional, spiritual, intellectual. And so being able to use the RAM model to measure a marital relationship has been great. He talks about doing something called huddles. So basically you use the RAM model to be like, where are we at in our relationship? So my husband and I currently have the RAM model taped to our fridge, and it has, like, we have all the little, like, indicators, the sliders, the know, trust, commit, rely, commit, and touch, and we just update it like throughout the day or throughout the week, and we know, like, okay, if this slider's looking a little low, let's talk about it and let's see what we can do. And it's a way to, like, constantly be evaluating and maintaining your relationship so that there's not something that blows up and then it gets really big and you have this huge thing to solve. It's just taking it day by day or week by week and just maintaining a good, healthy relationship. And it's been powerful. It's been good.
Wow. I love that. That's, like, so cool. To our audience, I just want you guys to know that Ava's literally, like, the coolest, most humble person I've ever met in my life. She also was on the New York trip when I went to the United Nations. I've had quite a few people on the podcast that were on that trip, but Ava was also on that trip, and she was such a trooper. She literally was, like, on crutches, and her knee was hurting, and she didn't complain one time, and she just, every single time you open your mouth, I'm just so blessed by whatever you have to say. I would say Ava's more on the quiet side, but you are so wise and just have so much good information. And not only do you have the good information, you're applying it in your marriage right now, which is so cool to me. So she's not just teaching it, guys, she's living it too.
I appreciate you saying that. That is so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. Another thought I had with who to recommend the book to, just like as you were talking, was that this could be a really good book for parents to read to, like, help their children, like, kind of guide their children through dating. Because I know, like, I will turn to my mom or my parents or whatever for, like, dating advice. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like they don't really know what to say sometimes. Yeah. But to be able to have this kind of vocabulary as a parent and be able to teach that to your children at, like, as soon as they start dating, just, I think could be super beneficial. Just kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about having concrete evaluators for where do you want to be? Where are you at currently? Like, with, and having relationships with, or conversations, with your children about that. So
I think that's really, really powerful to be able to read that as a parent, especially, like, if they're in the teenage years even and, like, starting to want to date, and maybe you have certain rules or expectations for your child regarding that and what that should look like. John Van Epp pulls in research and principles, and, like, also a little bit of neurology to describe, like, why shouldn't you commit to someone more than you know or them or things like that. Right. And so, like, helping your child understand, obviously, the emotional side of maybe how to date properly, but also the scientific side of there's an order and there's a pattern that helps you develop healthily, that will help you prepare for a better long-term goal of having a good, strong, healthy relationship. So, yeah.
I think that'd be really good too, especially, like, for dads, because I know, like, for my dad, for example, he's, like, a super science math guy. Like, he just is like, okay, this is the answer. Like, he never liked English, of, like, trying to figure out how the teacher wanted him to write the paper. He just wanted there to be a correct answer. Like, the answer is 7, like, whatever it was. And so I think this could be really good for dads who are kind of more stereotypically more manly like that, or whatever you want to call it. Like, just more of, like, a math science, like, this is the answer, less emotional brain, because he does bring in so much research, and it's literally just like order of operations. Like, okay, like this is how things are supposed to go. And it's just like, anyways, I think that could be really powerful. I'm going to send this podcast to my dad once it's published. Like, okay, Dad, I think this could be good for you. Good vocabulary to have.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Yeah. He's still got a few kids that are in the house, so
yeah,
could be good for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, what would you invite our audience to do with this information?
I think a good thing to do is to maybe take a relationship you're in right now. It can be dating, it can be marriage, it could be even parent-child relationship, and put it onto the RAM model. Kind of evaluate your relationship using the RAM model, using each of these indicators. Get to understand, what they mean and what they look like, and then evaluate it and pick just one area, know, trust, rely, commit, or touch, that you can do better on. Mm-hmm. The thing about each of the sliders that John Van Epp teaches is that if you pick one to work on, all of the other ones will be elevated by some, they're all connected. Right. So if you work on one, you'll work on all of them in a sense, but focusing on one helps you be a lot more effective in making that change.
I love that. Okay, well, is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap this up, Ava?
Yeah, I'd say this book really helped me personally to open up my perspective on myself, to see why some things were happening in my own relationship. When I read this book at a time where I had broken up with someone, it's my now husband. We were dating, broke up, got back together. But in this time when I read this book, we'd just broken up. Mm-hmm. And so I was reading it and seeing some of these things. He described some reasons why certain negative relationship patterns happen. And I was able to see some of those things in myself and then understand why and be able to make changes. And that was so powerful to be able to be that's why, or whoa, I do that, and it's because I struggle in this area of the RAM model, or because this thing, because of this previous experience I've had that makes it hard for me to trust, or whatever else it is. And so that was really powerful, because it does invite you to reflect and to be really intentional in your dating, which isn't easy to do. It's a lot easier to just act on your emotions and just see what comes, but if you want the best for your relationships, for your marriage, you have to do it intentionally and with purpose. Yeah. And he teaches us how to do that. And I think my favorite thing I've learned is in the rely slider, the rely category, is that he has this golden rule of marriage, is what he calls it. Do unto your other as your other needs. And I learned that in the first few months of marriage, big time, because you do everything you can to try to love someone and to try to show that love. Mm-hmm. And in the first couple months of my marriage, I was doing everything I could to pour out my love to my husband, and he did not feel loved. And I was like, what? And then, but the funny thing was, in a totally different conversation, he had been doing the same thing, and I hadn't felt that love. I'm giving so much more than I'm receiving. And it was really interesting to have that conversation and be like, well, how are you showing love? How do you receive love? And expressing love is so much more about understanding what the other person needs and how they speak love, rather than just loving however you feel like you want to love someone in a moment. And it's been really powerful to be able to help others feel loved by first understanding their needs and understanding their behaviors or their misbehaviors, by just looking at them as unmet needs. Yeah. And if I can understand my husband's needs or my friend's needs and what they really want, then I can love them a whole lot better, and our relationship's going to be that much better. And that has been really insightful to me. It's really changed the way that I love other people and the way that I love my husband.
That's so beautiful. Wow, I love that. It just reminded me of, I think is it Gary Chapman, the love languages guy? Do you know him?
I think so,
I think it's Gary Chapman. Anyways, I should do a podcast on that book too, but it just talks about, like, love languages and how, like, say, for example, someone's love language is, like, gifts and somebody else's language is, like, physical touch. So they're giving what they want, but they're not giving what the other person needs. So, like you were saying, they don't feel, like, super loved because they're not getting their need met. They're not getting spoken to in their love language.
Yeah.
And so it just reminded me of that. So if anyone's interested, I'm pretty sure there's, like, a bunch of, like, free resources online of, like, what is your love language? Just, like, little test things. So that could be a fun resource to check out. I'll see if I can find one too. But anyways, thank you so much for all of your thoughts. I really appreciate your time and your insight. And I just know that you put in a lot of effort into studying and really, like, owning the knowledge that you have. I think there's some people that go through college and they're just kind of there to check off the box and just, like, get the grade and get the degree. I don't see that in you at all. You're just, like, there to really absorb the knowledge. And it's so beautiful to me that not only are you applying it in your own life, but you're also doing what you can to share it with other people. And I think that is exactly what we all should be doing, because how am I supposed to know what I don't know until somebody tells me, right?
Exactly. And I think you're a great example of the same thing. So thank you.
Well, this has been a lovely, lovely time with you today. Thank you to our audience for joining us today on By the Book. We hope that you've enjoyed your time with us. The link to the book on Amazon and Audible will be in the show notes. So let us know in the comments if you end up reading the book and your main takeaways and what you learned from the RAM model. Next week's podcast will be released Tuesday at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Please also leave a comment below of other books you would like to hear about in future episodes or guests you think I should have on. Also, check out our Instagram page, By the Book with Katie, for updates and more info on these great books and our incredible guests, including an infographic on the RAM model this week. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.